Hello, good afternoon. My name is Manard Daphnis. I am the Director of Financial Aid for the Miami Dade College Wolfson campus. And this afternoon I am delighted to have the opportunity to share with you some information I think will help you secure some resources to help pay for your education. At any time during the presentation, if you have any question, please do ask. We'll start by defining what financial aid is. Financial aid is money that's available to assist students and their parents pay for their educational expenses. It is not a replacement of what the federal government wants you to come up with as a family, but it's to help supplement it. Financial aid comes in a variety of forms. It comes as grants, which is need-based gift aid, which is money that you don't need to pay back. Comes as scholarships, which is based on merit or talent, meaning something that you are exceptional at. You are a very good student. You are very good at playing a sport or something. It also comes in the form of loans, which is monies that you will need to pay back with interest, and also some employment opportunities. How do you apply for financial aid? What do you have to do to make sure you are putting yourself in such a position that you are receiving consideration for those resources? The form that's really the most important is what we call the FAFSA, or the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. That form is available as of January 1st of every year, and every year you plan to be in school, you have to do one. And as you are doing it, a concept that's really important for you to know about is what's called an academic year, because the FAFSA is good for an academic year. For instance, we are about to start the 2013-14 academic year, which will begin in the fall of 2013, and it's going to go all the way through to the summer of 2014. In most traditional colleges and universities, there are 3 semesters within the academic year. You have the fall, which is what we again, the fall, which is the semester that's just about to begin. It is followed by spring, and certain institutions call it winter. It's from January to the end of April. And it ends in the summer, which is from May to July. Now, that FAFSA, you have to do it, again, every academic year. There are 2 ways you can do it. You can do a paper application, which takes about a month and a half to 2 months, or you can actually do it electronically, which is what I would recommend. If you will be doing it electronically, the place to go to is www.fafsa.ed.gov. We have a couple of questions actually already. And the first question is, does financial aid help pay for my books? That's a very good question. If you are eligible for enough money in financial aid to pay for your tuition and have leftover for books, yes, it does. And it comes in the form of what we call a book advance. For students who are eligible, once their classes are paid, they can print their schedule, and if they have sufficient funding, an amount should display at the bottom of the schedule that will indicate that they do have a book, what we call a book advance, which will be an account created at the bookstore for them for the amount at the bottom of their schedule that lets them know how much money they can use to purchase their resources at the bookstore. Another question that came in, is there any eligible scholarships I can apply for? Well, right now, in terms of applying for scholarships, it will require that you do some research. You can go to mdc.edu and click on our scholarship webpage to find out what's available and how you can go about applying for them. Another question is, I have an OSFA scholarship and wanted to know if these funds will be added to my student account to help pay for tuition and other costs. Any scholarship that you have, when you have financial aid, it can be a combination of scholarships, grants, loans, and all of those things you can combine to pay for your tuition and other expenses as well. So yes. And another question, it says, I already submitted my FAFSA. Am I eligible for enrollment? Well, you could be eligible for enrollment even prior to filling out your FAFSA. So one is not really dependent upon the other. The fact that you did your FAFSA is a great sign, but it's not depend. You applying for enrollment is not really dependent on that. Okay. We'll continue again with the presentation, and I do like the questions. When you have them, please keep them coming. The two ways to complete the FAFSA again are electronically, and you'll see some of the advantages of doing it electronically as opposed to doing it online. And one key advantage is that the amount of time it takes. It takes about 1.5 to 2 months. If you do a paper application, it takes about 3 to 4 days if you do it electronically. If you will do it electronically and you want to do it completely electronically, you will have to create a signature, an electronic signature, which is what we call a PIN. At the same site you will go to complete the FAFSA, you will have the option to complete the PIN as well. It takes about 5 minutes to complete it. And if you are a person, what we call a dependent student, who does have to use the parent's information, you will have to create a PIN for yourself and a PIN for your parent. And that will allow you both to sign the form electronically without really having to do anything manual. What are some of the things required of you as you are completing the FAFSA? You have to be eligible for federal funding, you have to be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen. The term eligible non-citizen is a very broad term. So if you are not sure whether you are an eligible non-citizen or not, please, when you fill out the FAFSA, indicate that you are an eligible non-citizen and allow the feds to do a research on your status to make sure you are eligible or not eligible. But do not take it upon yourself to say you are not eligible, because there are so many different categories of eligible non-citizens that could be eligible for federal student aid. You also need to have a valid social security number. You need to have a standard high school diploma or a GED. You need to have prior year income information as you are completing the FAFSA. These are things they will be asking you. If you are a male between the ages of 18 and 26, you need to have registered with the Selective Service. And by the way, Selective Service is not the military, and it does not mean that you are joining the military. It's making yourself available to the feds in case there is a draft, and we have not had a draft in years. So it's not really putting yourself in harm in any way, shape, or form. You also need to have, if you are going to be completing the form electronically, please create a PIN. And again, if you are a dependent student and have to use your parents' information as you are completing the FAFSA, please create a PIN for one of your parents so you can complete the form completely electronically. A question that came is about how much money does FAFSA pay for you? That's a question that goes for each individual. It depends on your information, and that's why when you complete the FAFSA, they ask you so many personal information, so much personal information. It's because your eligibility is dependent upon your personal information. So how much money you are going to be eligible for will depend on your actual information. Another question is, how long will the financial aid in the dependent verification worksheet will be complete? How long will the financial aid in the dependent verification worksheet will be complete? I'm not sure what that question is, but if you are selected for verification and have to submit documents which would include the dependent verification worksheet, depending on the workload at the campus, it takes really, the turnaround time is between 1.5 weeks to 2 weeks after you submit your documents. Another question is, will American Dream Scholarship after applied give me any money back? Well, the American Dream Scholarship really is a last resort type of scholarship. If you don't have anything to help pay for your tuition and you are eligible for the American Dream Scholarship, it will pay for your tuition. But if you have other types of financial aid which are sufficient to pay, which are sufficient to pay for your tuition, then that American Dream Scholarship will not be given to you, or will not be disbursed to you. It's only to help pay for your tuition in the case that you don't have anything else that would satisfy the payment of your tuition. Another question is there a way you can pay for your classes separately instead of paying it as a whole? I'm not really understanding, but I think what you are asking is, can you pay class by class, or do you have to pay the full amount in one shot? The answer to whether you have to pay for it in one shot or not is yes. There is no partial payment. It's either the whole thing gets paid for or nothing gets paid for. Another question is, when do we get the money left from matriculation? You mean if you have leftover funds after your tuition and books are covered? We normally start sending out funds 2 weeks after the deadline to drop with the full refund has passed. Meaning if you start classes on the 23rd and the deadline to drop with the full refund is the 26th, 27th, a week and a half to 2 weeks after that date is when we're going to start sending out refunds. Another question is, if my dependency verification does not get processed by the class payment deadline, will my classes be dropped? If you don't come up with a plan to pay and your financial aid is not ready, yes, your classes will be dropped. However, I would strongly recommend, if your classes aren't paid for and you're waiting for financial aid to be processed, and the payment deadline date is approaching, to please visit your financial aid office and apply for a short-term loan. So that way you secure your classes and they don't get dropped. Okay, we'll continue with the presentation. What are the timelines? We talked about that again, the advantages to doing an electronic application as opposed to doing a paper application. It takes about 3 to 4 days for the electronic application to be processed, and it takes about a month and a half to 2 months for the paper application to be processed. Once the federal government receives your information and they process it, what happens? They will communicate back to you in the form of what we call a student aid report, a SAR, and that's going to be a summary of all the information you put on the FAFSA. What is your responsibility once you get that information? You are to review that SAR or the student aid report and make any corrections, if any corrections is necessary, and resubmit it or send it back to the Department of Education for those corrections to process. That document, you don't need to submit it to the school. It's for your personal information, because as they are sending that information to you, they will be sending it to the school as well. So we will get a copy of that document, and you don't need to send it to us. What are the different types of financial aid? We briefly got into that. We have two. We can classify them into two types: gift types of aid and self-help types of aid. Gift aid and are the types that you don't need to pay back, and there are grants and scholarships. And self-help types of aids are either you do have to work or you have to pay them back. And that's the loans and the work programs. We have a couple more questions that came in. Are there MDC funds available to students who do not have U.S. residency or citizenship? If so, is there a deadline for documentation to be submitted? That's a good question. And that ties in with you completing the process as timely as possible. Now, one of the things that's not on the presentation that's key for you to know is that there are different types of, we talked about the different types, but a classification, there are certain types of financial aids which we call entitlements, and there are certain types of financial aids which are not. A Miami Dade grant would be one such type of financial aid. It's not an entitlement. Entitlement means you can complete the process early or late and you still get what you are entitled to, and it would be the same exact amount. Whereas those types of financial aids which are not entitlements means basically you can meet the eligibility requirements and not have them. And the reason for that is because by the time you complete the process, there may not be funds available to assist you with that particular grant. And in the case for Miami Dade, grants for students in that particular category. We have a limited budget, so the students who complete the process first or early are the ones who are given priority consideration, because once we run out of funds, you can meet the eligibility requirements, but we're not going to have the funds to help you. So the answer to your question is yes, but you need to make sure the process is completed as early as possible. And by early, the timeline to follow is every year the form becomes available in January 1st. You need to make sure between January and February the FOSS is complete. If you are selected for verification and have to submit documents to the school, by March, the latest, those documents are turned in, even though classes will not begin until August. You do it that early, you are placing yourself in a very good position to receive consideration for MDC grants if you don't qualify for other federal or other types of financial aid. Another question is, when does the beginning of the term start? August or September? Will transportation be provided? The term begins late August. I think classes begin, don't quote me on that, I think it's around August 23rd. So it's late August, not September. We will have mini sessions, mini terms within the semester that will begin later, but the actual term begins August 23rd. But in terms of transportation, as a student, you are going to be eligible for certain discounts in terms of being able to purchase a bus pass or something like that, but the school does not really have a shuttle that goes and pick people up and take them to school, if that's what you are referring to. The most basic types of financial aid is we have what we call the Pell Grant, and that's a grant that comes from the federal government. That's an entitlement type of financial aid, which means you can complete the process early or late. You are still going to be eligible for it, and you are still going to get it. The amount that you are eligible for changes yearly, and Congress sets the amount for the year that students could be eligible for, but your eligibility will be dependent upon your personal information that you are going to be entering on the FAFSA when you complete it. Okay. We also have what we call the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. Unlike the Pell Grant, this is not an entitlement type financial aid, although it too is a federal grant. That one, we get a set budget and we award students until we run out of funds. When we do run out of funds, then you could meet the eligibility requirements and still not get it. That's why it's important to complete the process as early as you possibly can, following the timeline we just talked about before. Scholarships, I'd recommend you do a search, because scholarships do require that you do some research to find out what you are going to be eligible for. You can be eligible for a scholarship based on your the major that you are pursuing, your academic performance, for a number of reasons, and there are so many different sources that scholarships do come from. They come from the school, they come from the church you are going to, they come from any organization or entity you pretty much come in contact with can be a source of financial aid or a scholarship. So the key thing about scholarship is not to be shy, to ask questions, and to do some research. The self-help types of financial aid are employment opportunities. We have on-campus federal work study. We have what we call America Reads. Those are things you may want to check up on. We have community services. We have institutional work study, and we also have a program called Florida Work Experience, where we've partnered with certain businesses around the campus or around the college, where the state comes up with a certain percentage and pays for a percentage of your pay, actually. We have also loans, which are funds that you need to pay back, and the different types of loans we have are the Perkins loan, which is a low interest rate loan at 5% fixed at 5% interest. We have the federal Stafford loans, direct Stafford loans. For the Perkins loan, for the life of the loan, your dealings will be with the school. They're going to be the holder and the manager of your loans, and repayment on your loan begins 9 months after you cease to be enrolled at least half-time. Meaning you can graduate from here. If you move on to another institution, you can apply for deferment as long as you are taking at least 6 credits. We also have the federal direct Stafford loans, and of which we have 2 loans. Loans, unlike grants again, are funds that you will need to pay back. So as much as possible at this level, if you don't need loans, I don't recommend you apply for loans. But at the same token, the loans can be the only source available to help you in terms of completing your education. If that's the case, then by all means, don't let that stop you. Take a loan if you need to, but only if you need to. One question that came in is, how do we get a gift aid? First thing you can do is complete the process and follow the timeline and complete the process as early as possible. Chances are, if you are not eligible for federal or state financial aid, the school can give consideration to you. But again, we have very limited resources, so the students who do complete the process early are the ones who are given priority and may receive something. Another question is, how can one apply for the Pell Grant? Complete the FAFSA. That's the short answer to it. Another question is, if I am eligible for Pell Grants, will I be eligible every year at the college as long as my personal information does not drastically change? There are certain things you can never give guarantees to because the laws do change, and the federal government is the department that sets the tone for who gets the Pell Grant and under what conditions they do get it. So the conditions may change, and your situation remains the same, and what you are, and you move from being eligible to being ineligible. But if all goes well and nothing drastic happens, if your situation remains basically the same and you are eligible, you should consistently keep on getting it. Well, in terms of the different types of loans, we also have what we call a Parent Plus loan, which is a loan that as a dependent student, a parent can be eligible to apply for a loan for the cost of attendance for their child if their child is attending school. Now, unlike those Perkins loans and the Stafford direct loans, the Plus loan looks at your parent's credit history to see if the parent will be eligible. Whereas those other loans, you being a student and not being in default on a student loan are the eligibility criteria that they look at. What are some of the general eligibility requirements? We'll run through these very quickly because we are running out of time. One of the key things is that you are enrolled or accepted for enrollment in an eligible program of study, meaning you have a major that is eligible for financial aid. You've declared a major, you know what you want, and you declare it. You may not always be a full-time student, and that's a myth that a lot of people have. To be eligible for financial aid, they have to be a full-time student. That's not the case. You must be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen, and again, the term non-eligible non-citizen takes under it a very large number of categories. If you are a male, you must be registered with the Selective Service. Not registering could mean you are not eligible for not just financial aid, but sometime in the future for certain jobs that you may want to apply for. You may not be in default on a federal student loan. Default means you took out a loan, and that's one of the bad things about taking loans is that you have to pay them back. And when the time comes for you to pay them back, if you don't, then what's going to happen is that the feds will put you in default, which basically means that they'll ruin your credit and also prevent you from being eligible for additional financial aid. You must not owe a repayment on federal grants or loan funds. And the most important thing out of all of this here is that you must be making satisfactory progress. And we do have a standards of academic progress policy that measures your academic performance yearly. Students, the way the federal government looks at you is that you are an investment, and they will be willing to invest in you so long as you are performing well academically. And there are three components that your status is evaluated on, or your eligibility is calculated on. One is your GPA, which is grade point average. It needs to be at a C level or better, 2.0. Second thing is your completion rate. What percentage of the classes you are attempting are you completing? The required percentage is 67%. And how timely are you completing your degree? There's a cap, and that's the third component. First was GPA, second was completion rate, and the third one is what we call the 150% rule, which is a cap on how many credits you can attempt to earn your degree. And it looks at how many credits are required for the degree you are pursuing, and it limits you to 150% of that total. In other words, if the program you're enrolled in requires 60 credits for you to earn your degree, you would be capped at 90 attempted, not completed, 90 attempted credits, which would be 150% of 60 of the 160 credits required. So that is a big thing, because you don't want to start and because of your poor academic performance become ineligible. So it does pay to be a good student, and it does pay to maintain your academic performance up to the levels they should be, because that can have a negative impact. You may not have your eligibility suspended or terminated for having being convicted of a drug-related offense, meaning you were selling or possessing you were caught selling or possessing drugs. That does not entirely mean if that did happen to you that you are not going to be eligible, but it means you will have to complete certain programs and have to complete certain forms before your eligibility can be restored. And I was running to make sure I got through the entire presentation, and it looks like we did. And if you have any more questions, please keep them coming. Let me go back, because I think I may have overlooked a question. Okay, well, there are no more questions. I think we addressed all of them. So we'll do a quick recap of the whole thing to make sure there are certain things, the most important things, you keep them with you, and I think those will help you. The first one is the concept of an academic year. The academic year is not like the has 3 semesters in it. It starts in the fall, which is the term that's about to begin, and it usually begins in late August and goes all the way through to December. It is followed by the spring or winter semester, and that's from January to April, and it ends in the summer, which is from May to July. Now, every academic year you plan to be in school, you have to complete a FAFSA. This year coming is the 2013-14 academic year, so you have to do a 2013-14 FAFSA. For next academic year, which will begin in August of 2014, you have to make sure you do a 2014-15 FAFSA. The FAFSA is available every year starting January 1st, and the timeline that you need to follow to make sure you are positioning yourself in a way that you will receive consideration for all the different types of financial aid you could be eligible for is from January to April to complete that FAFSA, from April to March, from March to May, the latest, to submit all the documents if you are select, or if you have to submit documents to your school to complete the process. You got to make sure by March you submit those documents, and the latest by May, and by completing the process that late may reduce your chances of being eligible for different types of financial aid. So again, the timeline is January to April, complete the January to February, complete the FAFSA. February to March, submit documents if you do need to submit documents to your school. And that way, if you are not eligible for an entitlement type of financial aid and you want to receive consideration for those gift types of aids that are not entitlements, you are giving yourself that opportunity. I hope this information will help you and will help you secure as much funding as possible. One last question that came in: what is an A reward. I am not sure what an A reward. Maybe you're referring to an award letter. An award letter is a statement that comes from the financial aid office that lets you know what types of financial aid you are eligible for and how much of it. Again, I do thank you for coming on board. You had some great questions, and I hope our exchange today will help you get the most financial aid you could possibly receive and succeed in your education. Thank you and have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.